Hello. I have a question for you. When is a loaf more than a loaf? Here's a loaf. It's a familiar one. It's mass-produced. It's made using complex scientific methods. It's made by machines. Human hands only intervene when things go wrong. Here's another loaf. It's a simple thing. It's wholesome. It's made from 3 ingredients: flour, water, and salt. It's made by hand, and it earns me an honest crust. I didn't start my career as a baker. I used to work as a computer programmer. I enjoyed my digital life for a time, hidden behind a computer screen, an endless loop of problem solving. My bakery life is very, very different. It's down to earth, it's leveling. If the bake goes well, there are smiles all around. If the bake's off, we just put it behind us, and we're grateful that we can bake again the next day. I'm amused that these 2 loaves represent some of the changes in my life. I've been on quite a journey. And along the way, I've learned about the power of authenticity to grow not just a business, but a community that people are interested in. I didn't always wear dusty shoes. I used to go to work in quite a smart suit and a tie. I was drawn to London, the salary, bleeding edge of IT, the promise of a career with a large corporation, but it didn't pan out that way for me. I was concerned about my own abilities and that one day I may well just get found out. My wife was at home expecting twins, and I was commuting up and down on the train. The draw of home for me was really quite powerful. Then overnight, my life changed. It's the 20th of April 2008, and my twin girls arrived early. They were both born safely, but that was the nudge that I needed to admit to myself that my future wasn't in London and it wasn't in IT. Six months later, I started applying for IT jobs again because it's all I knew. But this time, cocktail of recession, my age, my general new father demeanour, just didn't help my case. Door was closed to me. I'd become an ex-professional, a new dad with few prospects. I signed on. My shoes were still clean. Back at home, I'm listening to a radio show about a bakery over in Yorkshire, and I think, that intrigues me. That's brilliant. And anyone who will listen for the next month, I talk about this bakery, I just receive rolling of eyes. My wife, however, buys me a day's baking as a birthday gift with this very same bakery. And I learn about how you make great sourdough using 3 ingredients, and that they use time to improve the flavour and generally the digestibility. I learn about the Chorley wood process and how that's a super zippy way of beating water and air into highly refined flour to produce a large loaf with low cost in a very short period of time. The scientists had managed to make more from less. Back in the bakery, we spent all day. We make 6 loaves. Come home very proud. In retrospect, they look pretty awful. My shoes, they're covered in flour. I glimpsed at the alchemy of bread baking. a tiny glimpse of my future. I've got a new hobby. My wife's thinking, it's like that treadmill that you bought. You used it once, and it never did quite fit in the dining room. I know it's different. I've seen my future. So I start baking bread, just for a few friends. I spend all day making these loaves in my home oven, 2 at a time. Friends have to pretend they're delicious. So after a number of unsuccessful attempts, most people would give up. Me, I headed down to the cellar with a bigger oven and a mixer, undeterred. Our routine was simple. The children were growing. They were at nursery on a Friday. We'd mix doughs. We'd bake. 5 o'clock in the evening, there'd be a knock at the door. Strangers were welcomed into the house from my children. We'd exchange money. Looks of admiration heading my way, along with concerns for my sanity. We'd learn new names. And warm, nicely wrapped bread went out of the front door. There was a genuine clamour for our bread. People had realised that once they'd tasted it, they didn't want to go back to the supermarket. They realised what they were missing. They were missing the taste, the flavour, the smell. As my children grew, so too did the business. We grew really slowly and at times almost at a standstill as life's troubles got in the way. We navigated through health problems and money problems and everything else that comes up. Staying true to your goals is really important. And it seems to me like the best strategy is to take your time and get it right. We moved around a bit. We baked in a café, and then we baked in a barn and an industrial unit. And eventually, we settled in town in a small warehouse. Baking's really hard. It's not as hard as me stood up here doing this TEDx talk. But we'd gone from 60 loaves a bake to now we bake close to 1,000 loaves on a busy shift. By comparison, the Chorley wood factories bake close to 2 million loaves a week. The scale is quite incomprehensible. We weren't backed by a fancy marketing campaign. People were just interested in something that was real, that was honestly made, and that was authentic. I mean, who believes the supermarkets with their claims of something that's freshly produced? They take those products anyway because the neighbouring products have the same claims. Instead of taking the freshly baked bread from the supermarkets, people were now coming to us. I mean, who can argue the authenticity of a loaf when you've got a baker that's covered in flour? The queue at my front door is now at the warehouse. Every 2 people in that queue knows another person. And they're all exchanging the time of day. They're coming together around something that's more than a loaf. They're becoming invested in our company, both socially and emotionally. Our landlord started to see what was happening. And when a few problems cropped up in the warehouse, he suggested to us that we might consider moving to a bigger space closer to the centre of town in a derelict building. We didn't rush into it. We sort of took our usual approach, which is a little bit like making sourdough, just slowly, steadily. And we decided we were going to just renovate the front half of the building. This is how it started. And on day one, when we opened the door, felt like half of Macclesfield was in there with us. This is me terrified on day one. We're now 16 strong, talented individuals. And we've started to draw up plans to convert the rest of the building. We need more seats, and we need a bigger kitchen. It's not uncommon for a small business such as ours to be low on funds, as any small food business suffers from the same thing. And we didn't really have the reserves, so we turned to a crowdfunding platform. We agonized over asking for help. And we felt like the tone of the message was really, really important. So, with trepidation, we launched a campaign to try and raise £20,000 over a month. At the same time, I developed a really unhealthy relationship with my internet browser. Sorry, with my refresh button from the internet browser. I messed that joke up yesterday as well. Don't let me lose my thread. We were fully funded in 4 days. We were staggered. Our community was genuinely rooting for our success. This passionate band of bakers were really adding something special to Macclesfield. My journey's not over. My shoes are still dusty. I've left my digital life behind to continue with something that's more akin to an analog existence. I've moved from a lone commuter to being part of a community. I believe that if we want to be part of a thriving town, we have to stand up and make our own contribution. It's really easy to moan about the high street, but it's really difficult to be part of positive change. I'm hopeful that what we've set in motion will be part of the fabric of this town for generations to come. You see, the pride in our town is reflected back at us by customers. Like real bread, building a real business takes time and care. It's about authenticity. Customers trust our bread because they know what goes in. They trust our business for the same reason, and they've been with us there every step of the way. Thank you.